BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Well, what can we say? It is now October, and it's one of the best months to have here in West Virginia. Everything is absolutely beautiful outside. We've got a lot of color in the trees right now. And I was out in the town of Paw Paw, West Virginia recently, Paw, that's what it's called, Paw Paw, and I picked up a particular magazine, and it's this one that you can see here. This is Signs of the Times, their special Beware of Ghosts edition. So we're going to first begin at the absolute beginning by asking the question, do you believe in ghosts? And also, you can share some personal experiences. I find that this is one of the more enthralling topics to go through because you always have to ask the individual, what is their personal experience with this particular subject? And we're going to have a particular article that is going to help us out that was written by Steve Wohlberg, Wohlberg, Steve Wohlberg, who wrote the Beware of Ghosts article. And there's a caption underneath that says, "They're real. And they're dangerous. They'll try to trick you into thinking they want to help you, but don't be fooled." So let's go through some of the stuff here. You may be thinking, wait a minute, are you saying that ghosts really exist? I'm not sure about that. A typical skeptical response. I realize that many people are skeptical about the supernatural. Still, such doubts can easily dissolve when a person has a bona fide spiritual encounter with an otherworldly entity, with something that simply cannot be explained scientifically. Of course, many charlatans tout their wares, but history also reveals many undeniable rendezvous with real spirit beings, such as those that were encountered with the Fox family in 1848. And we have a short story here about the Fox family, actually. However, before we read that, I would just like to say, what do you think about what we're doing so far? And what is something from your personal experience that would push you one way or the other, thinking about ghosts? And if we're going to actually just have some type of definition about what a ghost is, I'm sure you already have something coming to mind, but I would say the essence or spirit or some type of entity with a resemblance of a human being that has passed away that is present here on Earth. Someone is able to experience this type of presence. Once again, the essence, the entity that is still present on Earth. I mean, some people think that ghosts are simply just the souls that are wandering the Earth. Some people simply say that ghosts are images that they have seen. And the reason why I think that this is so fascinating is because I've said this before on the channel in a previous upload, but I was like, I had this coworker once who said that one time she walked down the stairs, and then once she got to the bottom of the stairs, she was picked up off the ground, feet not touching the floor or anything, and then something slammed her into a wall, but there was nobody present. Her only explanation for that was that it had to have been a ghost, because, I mean, before you even want to think, oh, it could have been this, it could have been that, I mean, that's how the brain works. We really want to know what is happening. And what we can say is, if someone is actually lifted off the ground, they're suspended in the air, and then they're slammed against the wall, that's why I would become so curious about these things, because I would be like, well, what really happened to her? There is a definitive answer that she is experiencing here on the physical world. What happened to her? And if you can share some of your own personal experiences, I would love to see some of that in the comment section below. Now, I said we would read something about the Fox family that Steve wanted to share in his article, so let's go ahead and do that. In March of 1848, young Kate Fox, age 11, her sister Maggie, age 14, and their mother Margaret heard strange rapping noises echoing from the other side of the wall in their home in Hydesville, New York. "Now, count 5, Margaret said to the mysterious knocker. Within seconds, 5 more raps followed. As this creepy dialogue continued, the trio came to realize that they were communicating with an intelligent knocker, and it eventually turned out that this person claimed to be a spirit of a dead person who had previously lived in that house. As word rapidly spread about this bizarre encounter, it eventually gave birth to a movement called modern spiritualism, whose motto to this very day is, "There is no death. There are no dead. According to spiritualists, they are very much alive and on the earth. And they are even on the other side as well, and they can easily communicate with the living. But notice a particular warning. When people shall say unto you, Seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep, and that mutter, should not people seek unto a higher power for the living or the dead? And it goes on and on, but I guess you can get the general idea. Now, you've heard the story here of the Fox family, Kate and her sister Margaret, and the mother is Margaret and the sister is Maggie, but I guess you could say that perhaps one and the same. Kate, Maggie, and Margaret. First, what would be your response to that? These people are just hearing a pattern of knocks and they don't believe that there's any person there. So their explanation is that, once again, this is the spirit of the person who previously lived in the house. Do you have a response to that? Now, I would say that we do often get these types of encounters, but I mentioned on the channel that I was reading the book Human Reality. And the section that I was reading today was actually rather interesting because it was talking all about science. And a lot of people are simply going to say that, okay, in the skeptic response, science doesn't have explanations that account for ghosts, therefore we shouldn't believe in ghosts. But the things they were saying in the book Human Reality were very simple. They were like, science can be very limiting. Science can often just ignore the concept of a human essence, period. But there is a certain sense of magnificence about the human essence. And you can hear this from a variety of different commentators, everybody from Jordan Peterson to Lyndon LaRouche, when they're like Darwin, Freud, Copernicus. These people enhanced our knowledge of scientific understanding, of how the brain functions, about the reasons why we think things, as well as how did humanity come about. How did things come to be? But at the same time, they also diminished the magnificence of that human essence. And that's why a lot of people are against those individuals that I just mentioned. And Steve Wohlberg has another story that he would like to share with us here. More than 100 years after the Fox incident, on the night of December 8th, 1963, American author Jane Roberts and her husband, Robert, were experimenting in their Elmira, New York apartment with a Ouija board as part of their research for a book on extrasensory perception, also known as ESP. Suddenly, the board's pointer began moving from letter to letter, forming words, then sentences. Robert asked the board to identify the name of its invisible operator. The Ouija board spelled out Seth, S-E-T-H. This communication continued, and soon Seth's ideas were flying into Jane's astonished mind faster than they could be written on the board. And Mrs. Roberts later described it, she felt as if there was something perched on top of a high diving board, with others standing behind her, urging her to jump. Finally, Jane made her choice and surrendered completely and took the plunge, and Seth took control. Throughout the next 21 years, until she died in 1984, Jane Roberts often entered into a trance-like state, saying that the mysterious Seth entity literally entered her body and dictated her messages. Now, once again, I would like to hear your responses to that. Big thank you to Steve Wohlberg, by the way, for putting all this stuff together in this magazine here. And their website is actually sitetimes.com. It's written in a different way than the name of the magazine, signtimes.com. So what I would say, though, is I'm reminded of something very similar with that. When she's talking about how the essence of this person comes into her and then this person can send messages, you might be thinking, all right, medium, like a medium can do this. But there was this show on television, and I'm just drawing a blank now. It wasn't called The Successor. It was the Uri Geller show that we had here in America. I think it was just called The One, but The Successor was the name of the Israeli version, and then they had the next Uri Geller in Germany. Uri Geller, the psychic who would go on the TV in the 1970s, and Ben Spoons and such, would go around the world running this TV show where he was looking for somebody to become almost like in a psychic competition. And there was an individual on there named Jim Callahan. He was on YouTube referring to himself as the Paranormalist. He was very active in the comment section. He would put out videos and then he would really talk to people a lot. But his name was the Paranormalist, and his real name was Jim Callahan. And he did almost the same act where he said that he could communicate with somebody who had passed away, an individual named Raymond, and he would get into this trance-like state, and then he would write the right words backwards and then hold it up to a mirror, and then it would show that the things that this person was communicating to him. Now, Chris Angel from Chris Angel Mind Freak was one of the judges on this show, and he absolutely tore him apart. They had a viral video going around about how he's just saying it's comical. There's no possible way you have actual superpowers. I mean, you're just using various forms of magical trickery. And that comes from the James Randi school of thought. If we can give somewhat of a skeptical interlude, James Randi was the magician, also known as the Amazing Randi, who first started out saying that he had this $10,000 prize for anybody who could demonstrate psychic powers under controlled conditions. I was a big follower of James Randi back in 2011. I was rather hooked on his web show, James Randi Speaks, because I saw one of the ways they acted this out, where he exposed the fake psychic James Heydrich, who said that he could use telekinesis and moved objects with his mind, and they revealed that he was simply blowing on them. And James Heydrich even confessed to this later on in an interview when he said that he learned how to exhale large gusts of wind without showing anything on his face or on his body, and he was just testing the limits of people and such. But the big point is, do we always have these material scientific explanations for everything? And if you want to talk about the essence of the human being, sure, I'll talk to you about that literally all day. If you want to talk about how there is this type of magnificence to being human, once again, I'll talk to you about that all day. And even if you want to talk about how science can be very limiting, about how it just excludes particular types of ideas, I will also listen to some of those things. I find it a little bit more difficult to accept certain types of things, like as we heard about this author Jane here, as well as the Fox family. I would almost say, though, that those stories seem rather simple. And once again, as we said, once you see that these are patterns that have been used by a variety of individuals over the years. What I think is so much better to talk about with ghosts and spirits and how they're functioning is when we did our upload on this channel called King Diamond on Satanism, we talked about how 3 people were sitting in a room. One of them was the Danish musician King Diamond, and he's with 2 other people, at least 2 more. And they all saw a candle rise up off of a table and float in the air. 3 people saw this. This isn't just one person that says she's in this trance-like state and she can communicate these messages from Seth. This isn't some people who are all hearing the same sound. All right, you're hearing a sound. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. This is a group of people. 3 different people are having the same experience, and they're all watching this object levitate. Now, what on earth could that be? Is there actually some type of psychological phenomenon going on where somebody can actually alter the being of reality, more or less? Or is this an actual ghost manipulating the scene, just breaking through a little bit, almost like Patrick Swayze in the movie Ghost, when certain boundaries can be pushed up against and they can be challenged and they can be controlled? I mean, I know that sounded silly, and it was meant to be silly in a little bit of context, but in other contexts, it's actually just, is that how things are operating? And are genuine hauntings taking place? If you are a skeptic, though, I would just love to hear absolutely every reason why. I tend to be very skeptical once you get to the concept of the spiritual entity is manipulating things in the physical world. But I love hearing these stories about it because, as I said, though, the same thing happening with my coworker who was picked up off the ground and slammed into a wall. Something happened to her. And if we're going to go through some of those types of discussions, we should also include that, we really just need to ask the question, what happens after death? And if you would like to hear an extended response to that, as I try to answer that question, you can go to the description box here, and we have an upload that we did back in 2019 called just that, What Happens After Death? The best way you can support this channel is just by listening to some more of our content, never asking for any money. All you got to do is listen. If you like what you hear, you can share it with your friends on social media, but most importantly, just listen. And as always, you can hit the like button and subscribe, really helps out the channel. But to digress from that, I mean, if we're going to look at this situation, why would someone still be able to contact with these spiritual entities, if they're even present? How and why are human beings able to be in contact with them? And if so, why only at certain times? And we've talked about this a little bit on the channel when we did our segment called Occult Mondays, and to share some of the other things, like, for example, I would actually like to go back to some more things from Steve's article here. And it says, Think seriously. Do you want your children reading certain books? I don't. Do you want your children reading a children's book about demons? I don't. Now, I mean, this is what is written here. I disagree with this completely. Children's books about demons, yes, absolutely, all the way. As bad as this is, it gets worse. We've all heard of smartphones, but have you ever heard of the upcoming soul phone? Sure enough, it's now being developed by a well-funded organization called the Soul Phone Foundation, which claims to be committed to an advanced evidence-based technology for spirit communication. Make no mistake about it, Ouija boards, spiritualism, spiritism, mediums, the use of magic and symbols, and the communication with ghosts claiming to be the spirits of dead people are all part of ancient, modern, and very real occultism. The Bible warns us about these things like the Black Death, and in the Old Testament times, as the nations of Israel were about to enter the Promised Land, God spoke of sober words, saying, He has chosen people. When you come into the land in which the Lord is giving you, you shall not learn to follow any abominations of those nations. Wow, there is a lot of stuff in there to Number 1, the soul phone. I will believe it when I see it. Even if you're going to play the skeptic card, one of the elements of skepticism is you will accept it if you have the proof. Why not? I mean, and think about that. If someone is going to say that absolutely it's impossible that things like ghosts exist, absolutely it's impossible that things like aliens exist, absolutely it's impossible that things like love exist, are they really saying that they would not accept them if they had undeniable proof? So the word impossible is not a very practical standpoint. Rather, someone could simply say that they are waiting for either the proof or more suggestive evidence or the totality of our own human experiences to guide us in this particular way. As far as children reading certain types of books, I would really think that we really need to be less afraid of things, and you can always do a case-by-case basis, and if something looks like it's really just a load of horse crap, maybe you can be like, I'm not getting that book for my kid. But if it's just simply, like, if some colorful pictures of things that are quote-unquote demons, no, absolutely, I would do that. It would really depend on the nature of the book. I wouldn't be so dismissive simply just hearing that title, there's a children's book about demons. And what about these things, though? Are Ouija boards just like an age-old tradition and continuation of old practices of occultism? Yeah, more or less. Have you ever used a Ouija board, by the way? I have, and I never had any life-changing experiences by it. And I loaned it to a guy named Chris once, and then he used it, with his sister. And then he thought the devil was going to enter his house, so he burned my Ouija board. And I was like, you dick! But I never personally had any life-changing experiences with something like that. And as far as that, these things are all just stuff we have to avoid. I really find that if you're only going to play the avoiding card and say that avoidance is the only answer, that is the bad type of censorship that everybody is trying to get away from. I mean, and the reason why I say that is because that is just limiting the curiosity of humanity. And let's not kid ourselves. People have this certain type of morbid curiosity for a reason, because there are all of these things that people are just telling you, you're supposed to be afraid of, you're not supposed to be around this. And then you just get that question running in your mind. Why shouldn't I read that book? Why shouldn't I be around that? And I think that as we go through these types of exploration, let's not kid ourselves. Some people only look at this type of stuff, reading about, magic and spells and witchcraft and occultism. They only read about this stuff purely for entertainment. And not everybody who's reading that type of stuff genuinely believes in ghosts at all. That's why I'm asking you guys about what is your standpoint on the issue. And you can also share your responses to the question, what happens after death, in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you guys on that. But really, it's I think that they covered a lot of area in this article, and it's, as you can hear, definitely it's coming from a Christian standpoint. I mean, this is a pamphlet that they're giving out in the foothills of West Virginia. We have a lot of that going around up here, but we don't want to be 100% dismissive in any direction, because that's the thing that we're being critical of them for, that I'm being critical of them for, that they're saying, hey, certain books are off limits. Why? Because they're written about a particular topic. that's not good enough. Maybe if there's some stronger explanations as opposed to simply because I said so. So when it comes to the concepts of ghosts, I would absolutely accept it if I had more evidence. At the same time, though, I don't believe that that evidence has quite yet been presented. I find this stuff absolutely entertaining. I was never really into ghost hunters and ghost adventurers, like in that type of material, because they're just sort of like, hey, what's that? Oh, a weird noise, run away. That was definitely not my style, but to actually just hear different people ghost stories. And I mean, that's just something that is so human to try and understand. And then going into the opposite direction, once we said we can talk about the essence of humanity, and you want to talk about consciousness, and you want to talk about does humanity even have a spirit? Does nature have a spirit? I absolutely love those types of discussions. But what I would really like for you guys to do is just share everything you have in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you. And the last thing I would say about ghosts and the paranormal is, one day, when we were at summer camp, I was like 16 years old or something, we snuck into a cabin that we found in the woods. And one of the other campers, his name was Doug, like turned around and he said, "Oh my God, guys, that broom was not there when we walked in." Broom, like BROM. And I was like, "That broom was not there? What are you saying?" He's like, "A ghost put it there." And I was just like, if you think that ghosts are so bored in their purgatory-like state that they're just going to leave a broom around as a signal to you, well, get sweeping, Doug. But aside from that, no, I mean, obviously he just didn't pay attention to it when he walked in. And, yeah, but I would like to hear your stories, and I hope they're a lot better than Doug at summer camp. But anyway, please drop anything you'd like to share in the comment section below, and that's all for me now. I will see you guys on Instagram for the bonus podcast, and please check out that link, What Comes After Death, available in the description box here. Until next time.